Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast. Hello, I'm Marc Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have the pleasure of Ben Fallon, the Senior Director of Global Challenge of Cisco Meraki in the virtual house. How are we doing, Ben?
I am pretty good. I'm pretty good. Like, in spite of the British weather, I'm feeling good. Like, I just know there's some sun around the corner.
I know. I was actually thinking the May has been absolutely awful, isn't it? It's just been raining all the time, and that puts the optimism on the back foot unless the sun comes up. But hopefully we're going to enjoy a good summer. Ben, I want to go straight into it because I was looking at your profile today, and I thought this guy has obviously had a successful career at Cisco Meraki, obviously previously at Cisco, but he actually started his career in distribution. Now, normally, I hope you don't mind, Ben, saying this, but normally distribution, most people, when they say to me distribution, is the dirty end of the channel, it's not the place to start, etc. They always say to me, oh, those people can't sell, Mark, and they're not very good salesperson. So I know that all the distribution people always have a go at me when I say that, but that is the feedback I get. It's almost like, oh, we don't want people from distribution, but yet you started your career there. So tell me how you got into distribution and how you kicked off your career.
Yeah, sure. So look, I mean, my career, I guess, started probably when I was washing pots and pans in a pub at some point, if you count all those jobs. So I did plenty of jobs growing up. And my first, I guess, like proper job that I had was actually working for Cisco. But I was at Cisco for 10 months, and then the dot-com bubble burst. And all of a sudden I was, 10 months into what an amazing career. And got made redundant. And it was the people that I was working with, both previous managers, people that I'd worked with, that went, hey, look, there's other opportunities out there and I had conversations with a service provider, a distributor, and I just really gravitated towards the people and the opportunity that presented itself. And so then I ended up working for an IT distributor, Aslan, prior to the acquisition by Tech Data. And I find that my view on distribution is what I learned was working at a vendor. It's very easy to work in weeks, months, quarters, years. Like, you've got these big transformational projects. I was in a distributor and you're working in minutes and hours trying to make sure things get moving and that you start actually executing on things quickly, because there's people waiting to get what they need. And it's sometimes easy to forget that when you work in a vendor, because there's so many layers in between you and the customer sometimes. So for me, it was really great place to learn, amazing contacts that you can make, and really you get a feel for the velocity and speed and dynamism of the channel.
Yeah, do you think it's a great place to start someone's IT sales career? Because I hear that a lot of people, when you sort of said that, it's almost like it's very fast paced, it's quick, it's lots of audits, it's minutes, it's hours, they're closing off the month very quickly, whereas it's a sort of slightly more strategic view when you work for a vendor. So do you think, so if you're an apprentice or a graduate out there, do you think that's a good place to sort of get a grounding into IT sales distribution?
Hey, look, I can think of people we hired, people we hired in when I was at that distributor, and even when I looked after a distributor at Cisco. People come from all different industries. I think one of the best people I had on my team, his job prior to working at the distributor, he worked on a building site, and he turned out to be one of the best people because he just completely threw himself into learning. So I think, look, everyone's got a great opportunity to learn in any role in the channel, because you get exposed to the customer, the vendor, and all the bits in between. And whether you're at a disty or a reseller, I think the learning opportunity is immense, because you get to learn about all the vendors and lots of different partners, lots of different customer types, rather than maybe just going too specialized too quickly and narrowing your opportunity later on in your career.
Great. And I was actually responsible for, I've placed quite a lot of people at Cisco, actually, probably over about 100, 150 people in the ISAM team back in the day. Quite a lot of people. Lots of people are still there. So I knew quite a lot about Cisco, and I do know a lot about Cisco. And yet I don't know much about Cisco Meraki. So obviously when they bought Cisco Meraki, that was a shock to me because I'd never heard of the company. So could you sort of give us a bit of a background about the two organizations and sort of what sets them apart, do you think?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So look, Meraki is very much part of Cisco. When Cisco acquired Meraki, like you said, you might not have heard of them, especially in the UK. They were pretty big in the US. They were starting to have a burgeoning business in the UK, but it was still relatively small. But the founders, it was a project where they were putting Wi-Fi onto the campus at MIT, and they kept having to climb up on the roofs because they were doing like a municipal Wi-Fi to kind of upgrade the software. And they went, hey, it'd be great if we created this like cloud-based dashboard to update firmware and manage these devices. Anyway, they put that as their project. It got presented to Google. They were one of the early investors, and they kind of went, hey, this sort of municipal Wi-Fi thing's great, but this dashboard thing that you're creating, managing networking through the cloud, automating firmware upgrades, simplifying the whole IT experience, that's where the money is. Go and start a company. And so the company went through iterations, obviously got bought by Cisco, doing a run rate of 100 million, and we'll be in the billions of dollars in terms of what the business has grown to over the time since Cisco acquired Meraki. But it's really about, if you think about what is our value proposition, it's simplicity. Whoever said they wanted a more complex IT infrastructure? Like no one ever.
Yeah.
And I think you've got companies now with things like, it was born in the cloud. It was thinking about how do you create an architecture that leverages all the greatness of the cloud. We can use analogies like iTunes and the iPhone, and I remember plugging that into my laptop to update it, and now it does it overnight, and I wake up and put my code in and it's done. And it's bringing that same experience to networking, which has traditionally been quite a complex technology area.
You mentioned there about simplicity, and as an end user, I'm not technical, Ben. I'm an IT sales recruiter at heart, but obviously I do buy tech. Do you think the pace of change in the IT industry and the complexity now is always putting end users off? And what I mean by that is, if I go to look at my set of assets at IT, I get someone in. Half the time I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not sure which technology to go to. It's all complex. It's very technical language. And you mentioned about simplicity, and we're getting away from actually getting more technical, where the end user doesn't really understand the complexity of it themselves. How do you think Cisco or Cisco Meraki or yourself can actually simplify, and how easy is it for when you go to end user customers to actually educate them on what they should be using?
Hey, look, something we're increasingly seeing is like the customers less interested in the bits and bytes and the bits and bobs and whatever else, and they really just want to know, well, what's it going to do for me?
Yeah.
I think if you can explain what the technology is going to do, what problems you're going to solve, then you start landing somewhere that's pretty powerful. I have the fortune of working with a number of people that it's easy sometimes when you're going into solution mode to come up with all these like things you can do. And if you just ask the simple question of what problem are we trying to solve here, quite quickly you realize you might have taken 10 steps into the realm of being complex and being difficult to understand. So I think it's always going back, what problem are you solving? If you can integrate with other technologies easily and seamlessly, and kind of rather than talk to a customer about how fast a switch is or how many ports it's got, you want to talk about how could you improve the experience of a customer when they come into your store? How could you reduce wastage in your manufacturing cycle? How could you protect people that are coming into your workplace, if they're wearing the right, PPE, or have you got too many people in the building? How can you do stuff like smart crowd control and move people around venues in an appropriate way to sort of minimize people, too many people being in one space? Like those things resonate. Those are problems people are trying to solve, not how fast is my access point and how many widgets has it got. So I think that's that's the real opportunity, is not to try and demystify something that's complicated, but focus on the problem you're trying to solve and relate it back to what the business is trying to strive for in terms of their goals. I know it sounds simple, but it's very easy. And even if you're an organisation that believes in that, you need people that are going to keep rowing you back from stepping into the complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Now, I noticed the global channel team at Cisco Meraki has grown from around 46, I think, to about 160 in the last 2 years. Now, huge growth in terms of numbers. So what challenges have you had to overcome to sort of make that happen? Because that must have been quite challenging. That's, 3 times the growth.
Yeah, well, those are across multiple departments in my team, so I'm not having to be the one that hires all of them. What I would say, look, if I think of like my path to doing that, first of all, it wasn't about me. It was putting some processes in place. Like, we created a hiring toolkit, just questions lined up with the right competencies you're looking for. It's amazing how many people I don't know if this is just a big organization thing, but it'll be like, right, I've got my interview panel, go and speak to the candidate. That's it. And so people just end up having a chat, figuring out if they like them or not. And that's the recruitment process. Whereas if you kind of say, here's what we're looking for, here's a set of questions that you can use with a scoring mechanism to determine if that person's going to be great at doing that job or not. That reduces your recruitment cycle down. It improves the candidate experience. But ultimately, you've got to source great candidates as well, right? And I think that has probably been the biggest challenge in some markets, is can you get hold of not just the right talent, but can you attract talent to your brand and to your company? And that's where things like social media, I know we're going to touch a little bit on the Cooking with Meraki and some of the fun things that we're doing online. Those create a brand and those create engagement for, your next generation. And there's, people see that stuff and they reference it in interviews, and it's motivating for them, and it's motivating for the people that have been involved in making it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the feedback I hear from sort of what I've read and what I've heard from sort of partners is that the experience of working with Cisco Meraki is amazing, which is great. So what do you sort of think sets you apart from other vendors and your experience of working with partners?
So, I mean, look, I'll go a little bit back to what we spoke about. We do focus on simplicity, right? Yeah. And that's a different message than what the industry's probably had for a long time. We care about the experience. If I think about this, it's the small things. You see people doing, merch and swag, or whatever you want to call it now, merchandise, and sending bits out. We've been doing that for like longer than I've been at the company. So it's probably like 7 or 8 years. And at the time, that was a fresh kind of new thing to do. But everything we try and do, it's about how do we make it easier? How do we make it engaging? How do we make it exciting? How can we make sure that the partner's making money? And like, if we say we're going to do something, we do it. And I think those are the things that really matter when it comes down to like having any kind of partnership, right? Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on it already, but I did hear a rumor during lockdown that you had the responsibility. You had the responsibility of obviously leading the channel business, but also you became the sort of like the global channel chef. Which I started looking at the videos earlier. I was thinking, this is like the Great British Bake Off or something. so what I was interested, Ben, was because from a fairly corporate, especially Cisco, corporate customer, most vendors are sort of fairly corporate and only sort of do things in line with their brand. So my initial thought was there any sort of like reluctance internally to do this something it's a bit left field, isn't it? Doing this sort of global chef thing. Yeah. So was there any sort of pushback internally on that? What I would say was initially I was like, how do I build a team around me to get this like very, very kind of basic idea, really. I didn't have any detail around it. I was like, we should be doing some kind of social media videos on something. Like that was pretty much the extent of the idea. I chatted to our marketing department, a few others, was like, hey, I've got this idea. What do you think I should do? And they're just like, it's the kind of organization, the Cisco Meraki team, where it's like, hey, look, well, go and try it. Like, we're not going to stop you doing it, but you're probably not going to get anybody who's going to carve out their time and do it for you. So that meant it was kind of a skunk works project where you just grab some people and go, hey, I've got this idea, do you want to be part of it? And that was really how it started, Mark. It was very much like a grassroots thing. What I would say was the intention of it was, I spoke to a few kind of early in career people in the business, and they were like, hey, we don't really do anything on social media. All we do is take a corporate campaign and then someone like posts it on social media.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at most successful social media, it doesn't exist anywhere else. It's on Instagram or it's on TikTok or whatever it is now.
Yeah.
So it was like, can we create something that only lives online? It only lives on social media, in this case, LinkedIn mostly.
Yeah.
And can we have some fun with it? Lots of people wanted to do more online, didn't know what to do, didn't know where to start. So we went like, let's come up with an idea. I happen to have a friend cameraman who messaged me right at the beginning of lockdown and went, everything's been cancelled. Got any jobs? And I was like, kinda. I got this idea. And then we had probably a 30-minute chat on the phone, came up with this concept and then built on it from there. So in terms of resistance, I'm fortunate I'm in a company or part of the company that it's like, be different, embrace change, try and do something transformational. But also it was my colleagues and the people I work with that approached it with as much, if not more, enthusiasm than I did at times, that really made it work.
Because you mentioned there about, or I mentioned about I see most vendors, and it's not a dig, it's just my feedback when I see it. Most vendors' marketing, when I look at it, is quite dull, Ben. I don't see much stuff online where it's, they might run webinars of what their products are, but and I know we're dealing with tech, but it is still quite dull. And obviously, when I looked at your initiative there, I thought that was pretty wacky. It's very, very left field.
Oh yeah.
Is there any sort of other sort of initiatives that you're doing at Cisco Meraki, or you did during lockdown that you thought actually we didn't do before that maybe we'll keep now? Because is this something that you think that's going to be carrying on moving forward, the global chef?
I mean, look, the fun thing is let me start with this. My advice to my team when the first kind of lockdowns came in was like, don't cancel, don't postpone, reimagine. Okay. Because this is going to last longer than most of us think. I said this could last 6 months. Turned out I was pretty wrong on that as well. Everyone was thinking they could delay something 6 weeks, and that was it. Fantastic. We were sorted. We'll just do it in 6 weeks' time. I was like, we need to rethink everything. And so this was like an opportunity to rethink everything and to do stuff different. So I lost the track of what your question was then.
In terms of that over the last 12 months, I'm looking at Cisco Meraki as a business.
Okay, different. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So part of that message was also, it was like, don't just try and be better. Don't be like, oh, how can I do an EBC with a customer and just make it maybe a little bit better?
Yeah. I
was like, be different. Like maybe instead of opening up with a half-hour speech from someone senior, get a DJ on for 10 minutes and play some music and get everyone feeling pumped. And it's like, wow, like this is different.
Yeah.
When people come to our offices, we have a different experience as people skateboard around the office. In San Francisco, we've got dogs and it's very industrial, and you kind of know you've been there, and people are like, there's a little bit of magic that gets sprinkled on people as they came through the door. So we've got to recreate that online.
Yeah.
So I think you've probably seen now everyone's doing wine tastings or gin tastings or the DJ thing's probably a bit overdone now. But we in the US, we're doing this pizza cast. It's like come and watch a webinar and a pizza will turn up at your house for you to eat while you watch it. It's just very simple, easy. We all need to eat, So it generally works. And again, bring a bit of energy, do something a little bit different, and your engagement will probably go up, versus if you try and be super smart with your message and change your font 10% and your message 10%, like maybe you get 0.1% more engagement, but do something radically different and maybe you could double it or triple it.
Do you think, Ben, your engagement with your customers has been different? And what I mean by that is over the last sort of 12 months during COVID, people have had to reimagine, like you've said, they've had to change, they've had to sort of readapt. Basic stuff like going on WebEx or whatever platform you're using, and they've had to have different relationships with their customers. I'm looking at your home now, and I can see a bit of background, etc. And you mentioned about the initiative when the pizza comes. Do you think that more relaxed, more innovative way of engaging with customers will continue now? Because I'm hoping it does, because everyone's a bit more friendlier and easier to deal with. I think that business is more interesting, but it was quite staid before. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, if anything positive comes out of COVID, there has been that sort of more interaction with customers and more engagement, but more fun initiatives, etc., and engagement. And so my question was, with your customers, do you think that will continue, and you'll continue to sort of try and do those initiatives and that more relaxed approach to work?
Absolutely. I mean, that has been our approach. That it's a very experiential engagement you have. Anything from when we do get back in the office, when people come in, it feels different. When you're engaging online, when you have an engagement with someone from either the channel team or our customer team, we want to be making a difference and solving a problem for that customer. So it runs through everything we do, and it's that like be different, like stand out. 10% better, like it's probably not going to get you very far, because it's all about attention, right? And it's not about attention for me or attention grabbing as a person, but it's like, can you resonate your message with who you're talking to? Does it resonate with them? Is it going to solve their problem? Is it going to do something different for them? And can you get fun with it? Because you've hooked them in with what they're looking for. So don't do the meeting serious and then go out, have some beers and have the fun bit. Why can't that extend to the entire engagement, where you're building a relationship from the get-go and you're kind of treating everyone as a human being? That, why can't you be a bit more at work like you are at home?
Yeah, it's more authentic as well, Ben, then, isn't it? If you like that, you're the same person. If you're having a social event afterwards, but if you're having that same engagement and you're the same person throughout, or the same types of values of your customer throughout, I think that's so important. It's and hopefully that if COVID's done one thing, I think that's really, I'd really like seeing the customers the clients that I'm dealing with do a bit something different. Like you said, the global chef. I thought, do you know what? I've been asking about that with Ben, because I was thinking, quite corporate customer, or I thought my perception of Cisco was quite corporate, and yet this wacky idea of doing it. So I think it's
totally. Why not?
Yeah,
and it's stuff like it wasn't. I mean, so the way I came up with the global chef was in the US. The name for, if you're the channel leader, is you're the channel chief.
Yeah, channel chief.
And I was like, if I chop that I out, I'm a chef, global channel chef. Like, that's it, done. And it was as simple as that. And that's the reality. Sometimes these things come from something simple. And then it was, can we come up with some recipes that sound fun? That, again, if you can come up with some simple analogies, easy to engage people, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I've always done. It's like something that's business relevant, but if you can make it into a bit of fun. So we had remote working ravioli. We had Wi-Fi 6 Wagyu beef. We had a full stack fruit salad. We had like secure SD-WAN sushi. And do you know the best part of it all, Mark, was that I didn't write a single script. None of that was mine. So when people say, Ben, your cooking show, I'm like, wasn't mine. It was the other 10 people that came on. They wrote the script. They developed the idea. I just gave them like an idea and went, secure SD-WAN sushi, and then they would come back with a script and we developed it together. So it was really about engaging not just the audience, but people in the company. It became quite a positive thing, right? I said about being positive, I think, to you earlier. It became this thing that every week, in a pretty miserable time when everyone was a bit scared as well, because we didn't know anything really about COVID-19. And it was just that little escapism that every week everyone knew there's a little 5-minute hit that would give them a little smile. They might learn something. And again, it was just a fun way of engaging customers, partners, and also our internal teams.
So I noticed on your profile today, I was thinking, Ben has been at Cisco and Cisco Meraki for 20 years.
It's not quite that long. But
is it? No, nearly
17.
17 years.
Yeah.
And you get more for murder really than that. So what has made you stay at the company for so long? Why have you stayed?
So I think there's something how Cisco describes it, which is you can have many careers and many jobs at one company. And I found that to be totally true. I started out in the UK. I went from the UK and then lived in Dubai. I was there for 5 years and I got married, had my kids and stuff while I was there. Moved back and they rejigged all the territories and I went from emerging markets to Europe. And then I moved into a startup that Cisco had acquired in Meraki and took on a global role. So it's felt like a different company at every job I've taken every few years, yet I've built up, capital within the company, right? Because I've got knowledge, I've got a network. I've invested in Cisco and Cisco's heavily invested in me. And so that I think when it comes down to it is really where it, where it works. I feel invested in, so I invest back.
Do you think people tend to move mostly within working within the channel? They move sort of every 2 to 3 years. So do you think loyalty is a bit overrated or underrated?
I think things shift sometimes generationally as well. There's definitely things that change over time. I was reading an article at the weekend about how the young, people coming into work now, probably in their sort of 20s, early 30s, will happily share their salary and things like that, and share a lot more openly. Like, hey, this is what I earn, this is what I do, and this is what this costs. Like that was not a thing. So dynamics change, which can change loyalty. Because would I have been as loyal as I am if I knew all of that information? Right? It's quite an emotional topic, what people get paid, and it's an important topic, right? Because it's the thing that it can be connected to quality of life. It's clearly not the thing that determines it. So my experience is that being loyal, right, but feeling loyalty back has been the thing that's probably kept me at the same company. So it's got to be a two-way street. It can't go one way. Otherwise, trust isn't there. And then why would you stay somewhere that you don't trust that company or your manager or whoever's got the best intention for you? Right. So I've been lucky. I've been fortunate. I've always had great people that I've worked with and great people I've worked for. And I've made that a big part of choosing roles. People have dangled a big carrot in front of me before, and it's like I may have not wanted to work for that person, and therefore it's not that interesting, because you've got to enjoy what you do. You've got to love getting up and going to work. Otherwise, that's a pretty decent chunk of your life that you're miserable.
It is. You mentioned there, obviously there's a quote out there saying, choose your boss wisely and all that sort of stuff. Do you think that's a bit of a good advice for people when they go to interviews? They're looking at their boss and thinking if they can't see that they've got their best interest or career development at heart, it's not a great place to work. So would you look at bosses and think, actually, I work for the person rather than the company?
There's definitely a decent chunk of of good advice in that, what you just said. I think interviews, it's like you're as much trying to figure out as a candidate if you want to work there as the employer is trying to figure out if they want you
Definitely
to be one of the people that works at their company. So if you feel no kind of two-way street or effort in an interview, and you consistently see that, then that's a cultural thing that exists within that company. If you have a few uncertainties about one person, or you might feel uncomfortable in the conversation, sometimes your biggest learning from the moments that you're most uncomfortable. So it's not about if you like someone, but can you learn something from them? Do you think you'll be in an environment you can thrive and learn something? And really, if you're learning and you're enjoying yourself, you're probably in a great spot and you'll go far.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people that we speak to, a lot of candidates that we speak to, feel they've got to move to another company in order to get a promotion or career advancement. Now, you've gone against the grain, then opportunities have come up for you and you've stayed within the same organization. And obviously, Cisco Meraki was sort of slightly different. What advice would you give to candidates that are looking to build their career within an organization but want to get that career ladder up?
Hey, look, there's 100 podcasts out there with amazing advice in. If I had to summarize it, like the single biggest like thing you can do is like make sure you've got a really great advocate for you within the business, because it won't be you on your own that gets you to the next thing. It will be other people. It will be the room you're not in, who's representing you in that room. There's a great speaker at the moment. We had her on an internal thing, actually, a lady called Carla Harris. Amazing advice. Just go and watch her TED Talk or listen to a podcast that she's on. I think she's been on as a guest on quite a few. But she's like, find who it is, make sure they're supporting you, ask them what they're going to say when your name comes up. Are they going to go, yes? Or are they going to go, eh? Or are they going to go, right? Because you get one little, that can be the thing that maybe is the one step that you didn't consider, or the one piece of the puzzle you didn't consider that could mean stardom, or maybe you just carry on doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
But I'll just say, like, the final bit is, think how much time you have to invest in moving company. I've got to learn about a new company. I've got to create probably like 5 different slide decks for the 5 people I'm going to speak to. I've got to maybe go and see if it's a good thing to do. I'm going to invest time thinking about how I'm going to answer all these questions. What if you invested all that time in building your internal network, investing it within the company, doing all those same things, probably find you'll come across some pretty cool opportunities. So think of it as a choice. Think of it where you invest your time. It's not about no time externally. It's about, are you investing the same time internally to help you progress and land that next job you think that you can go and do a great job of.
Right. Ben, the show has been, the Channel Chat show is in 40 countries, without giving some shameless plug, and you've managed lots of global teams. So what have you learned about managing people from different countries and different cultures? Because that must be really challenging.
I've got a short paragraph answer on this. Everyone will tell me that everything's different in different places, and what I say is everyone's different and everyone's the same, and both statements are entirely true, because we are human and there is a human element that connects us all. There's a lot of psychology that spans lots of cultures, lots of countries, and things can work in one place as much as they do another. Yeah, the funny thing is, every place I go, they go, Ben, I know you've worked in this area and I know you worked in this country, but there's something I've got to tell you about working here. It's different. People buy from people. And I go, okay, because that is exactly the same statement that most places make. The context of that can be different, but we're all human. We all have a set of needs. There will be cultural things that are different. There'll be things, if you go to Japan, you've got to follow a certain kind of protocol or hierarchical kind of approach to things. And there's almost a ceremonial part to some things. Amazing. That's fun. That's, it's learning. But when you think of the needs of the people and what they're looking for and how they're motivated, we're a lot more similar than we are different. So learn the odd hello and goodbye and thank you in a different language. All of a sudden, it feels like you've made an effort. And that's something that I try and do as I go to different places. Just turn up, show you've made an effort. 9 times out of 10, it's then about getting to know the team, getting to know the people, and there's some common tools you can use to keep people engaged.
Great. And Ben, my last question. I know you're not Mystic Meg or anything like that, but I'd like you to give me your sort of prediction for the next sort of 6 months. Where do you see the opportunity is for maybe Cisco Meraki, and also yourself? Where's the opportunity for yourself in the next 6 months?
Okay, so the biggest business opportunity we've got is companies realize, digital is not an option. That is the core of every business. I think it's probably 10 years ago, Cisco said, every company is going to be an IT company. I think that's the mindset now that every company has. So there's a huge opportunity that comes with that. We've gone through a wave of helping people work remotely. We now have an opportunity as a vendor, as a partner community, as a set of customers to really dive into that and go, what changes? How do we truly create an agile and dynamic business that can thrive in any environment? Not just about working from home. How do you engage customers differently and all that kind of stuff? So I think that's the big opportunity. For me, the biggest kind of inhibitor for a lot of what me, my teams, people that we engage with, it'll be more of a psychological barrier of we've all got very comfortable sat in very familiar, consistent environments. That all changes. Like the radius that I move from around my house will extend beyond a mile, which is probably my average for the last year. Whereas beforehand it was like thousands of miles, right? So there's a routine we've got to recreate, and we've got to do that safely. We've got to do it at the right pace in different countries. But I think challenging ourselves to think, how do we engage differently? How do we re-engage with the conditions and environment that we're in, depending on where we are? And for me here, that will mean in the next couple of weeks, heading into the office, following our protocols, but breaking a cycle of waking up, maybe putting on a shirt, most of the time a pair of shorts, and going and sitting at the same desk every day. I've got to break that cycle, and a lot of people have to break their own individual cycles as well. Yeah. Ben, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for your time.